Yuki and John's Patreon bird.
All right, Yuki. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, so you got some suggestions, Yuki, and a couple of them, you know, we're gonna have to. I think because one of them you want to do is World War I and World War II. I don't know if we could do that all in one episode. I think that's two separate episodes. And I would like to at least read the Wikipedia page for World War I and World War II before we talk about that, because again, I know certain things, but I don't know everything. And since both my grandfathers fought in World War II, I'd like to at least honor them by learning a little bit more about it before we talk about it. You know what I'm saying?
I see. Okay.
But one suggestion you made, which really intrigues me, I really like, because I have a lot of thoughts on this because I've thought about it many, many times, and I've read some literature on this sort of stuff, and it gets into things that we both like conspiracy theories, etc. It's fantasy versus reality.
Right.
I like this topic very much because it intrigues me in the way that people say even our reality isn't real. Like, our five senses aren't experiencing reality. It's an illusion that our five senses pump into our brain, and our brain interprets the stimuli to show us this world. But this world is an illusion because we can't even fucking see and hear the full spectrum of all things, like infrared or low frequency sort of stuff. We can't hear that shit. We can't see that fucking shit. So our reality is not really a reality. It's sort of a fantasy. So that's why I like it, but I don't know. What were your thoughts on thinking about that?
Well, I was thinking more, related to more a movie subject, because
See, I'm thinking about the fucking the meaning of the universe, and you're thinking about just okay, but that's cool too. I mean, look, like so what were the movies you were
okay, it's a Taxi Driver. Is that reality or fantasy, or King of Comedy? Is that the reality or fantasy?
That's interesting. Okay, we can talk about both. So I think with those specific ones,
one more.
Yeah,
I thought about American Psycho. Is that the whole thing is in his mind, or it's a reality thing?
Yeah, there's a big theory as to whether or not he's just hallucinating the whole time, and he is. Even if it is all an hallucination, he's still a psycho. It doesn't matter. If he did the things he did, he's a psycho. If he didn't do the things he did, he's still a fucking psycho. Because there's that point where at the end, when he has that big phone call and he's on the phone and he's like, I killed people, I ate people, and the guy's like, what are you talking about? Like, that you didn't do any of that, and he kind of laughs it off. Some people think that when that happens, his confession is that he's just all done it in his brain or whatever, and he hasn't really done it. Other people say that it's like a tribute to the excess of the 80s, where even when a person who was a prolific serial killer admits it, the people around him wouldn't even believe it because it's just so unbelievable, and all people are partying and drugged out, and they don't see the reality. So you're right. That's an interesting one. When I first saw it, it was after Fight Club. And I when I was watching it, I knew it wasn't like a Fight Club thing where he thought he was someone else or something like that. But I knew that some of it, maybe he was exaggerating in his brain. Because there's the end where he's like Paul, I forgot the guy's name. Paul Allen? He kills the guy and lives in his apartment. And then at the end, he says, I killed him, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I just saw Paul Allen. And so that breaks his whole story. So what do you think? Do you think American Psycho's a fantasy or a reality?
I thought that tomatoes a long time ago, but when I saw the movie, I said, no, everything is happening in his head. I thought the whole movie was in fantasy or dreaming in his head. I thought this isn't reality. That's my take.
Well, I prefer in that situation that it wasn't plainly stated by the filmmakers. There's a lot of shitty movies. Well, or I'll rephrase that. There's a lot of movies that become shitty when they full-blown tell you it's a dream or a fantasy. Like, you ever see that movie Identity?
Oh, yeah.
Dude.
I didn't like that.
What a shitty twist. It's like the whole movie, it's actually kind of a good movie. The rainy motel, everybody's trapped there, the intrigue and murder and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden the reveal, and it's like, oh, God.
Yeah,
so you made us sit through this whole fucking movie for that?
Yeah. No, I didn't. I kind of same reason I didn't like Shutter Island because of that.
Same thing. So whole movie, you're sitting there, you're watching this movie, you're like, this is cool. This is like a new neo-noir. You got this thing, and then all of a sudden they pull the rug out from under you. And it's like, so every single thing that we just watched didn't matter.
Right. It's all bullshit. So that's why I really hated Identity. I really hated Shutter Island.
But with American Psycho, it was clever enough to leave it up to us.
Right, it does. So that's what I like about it. Yeah,
I love American Psycho, and I think it's a mistake to remake it. Whoever's going to take on that movie, they're remaking it. It's a mistake.
Making it?
Yeah,
Oh,
they're looking for somebody to take on the role of Patrick Bateman now. It's a big mistake.
Oh man,
yeah.
Why people doing that?
Corrupt Hollywood. They don't have any fucking new... Well, they have a billion new ideas, but they won't fund them because gotta have an IP that people recognize. Fuckers.
Fuckers, yeah. And then the Warriors, I think that's kind of whole thing is fantasy.
No. Why? Why the fantasy?
Because first of all, those costume and the makeup, it's not realistic to me. It's like a whole, those gangs uniform, and then especially Furies, the makeup.
Yeah, but it's with the Warriors, I don't know. I mean, I think that's more like, it is a fantasy, but I don't think it's like a dream or anything. I think it's just a cartoon universe, a comic book universe.
Comic. Wait, have you seen comic the animation?
No, you told me about it, and I'm going to watch it, but I still haven't gotten the DVD or the Blu-ray or whatever.
Yeah, there is a cartoon. It's not the animation, but I mean there is a cartoon. The page, every scene, he put it there, and then those Greek warriors.
Yeah, like the like the Achilles and all that stuff, like the Spartans, and so they relate it to the Greeks.
Animation and put it in before the scenes. So
yeah, I got to see that, but I don't think like. All right, there's a question in American Psycho. Is it all in his head, or is it a reality, or is it a mixture of both? With Warriors, I don't know. Is there a moment where they're kind of like, oh, it was all a dream, or it wasn't really happening, the fight and stuff like that? I don't think so. I think it all pretty much is stated plain out that it's a real, not real, but it happens.
okay, so it's not really not real, but it happens. So what do you call that?
A fantasy genre. It's a fantasy. It's an action fantasy or a comic book movie. I mean, it's an early comic book movie, I guess.
No, is a Marvel movie fantasy?
I would say that's got fantasy elements. Sure, it's but you know what? You're right. People don't really use the word fantasy anymore to describe something. Like those would be considered comic book movies now, right? I think that sort of, for at least Marvel and DC, has replaced what you would call fantasy. I think, like, for example, I think Star Wars used to be considered a fantasy genre, right?
Like a space fantasy or space opera or that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I feel like fantasy is sort of fallen out of fashion when describing a new release. I don't remember the last time that somebody was like, it's a fantasy action or comedy romp. Maybe like the Dungeons and Dragons movie they described that way, the one with Chris Pine.
Oh, the dragons and dungeons and those medieval stuff.
Yeah, that's fantasy. That's fantasy for sure. Like Willow is a good example of a fantasy.
Yeah, we know, but like the medieval story, it really happened. Historically, it happens, right?
Right, but then when you start adding Merlin in there with the fucking the magic and all that stuff, then it starts to become fantasy.
Yeah.
Dragons. People say dragons didn't really exist, but I think a lot of times they'll add in dragons with the King Arthur and like the quest for the Grail and shit. Yeah, I would say that's fantasy.
So what's the really difference between fantasy and the sci-fi?
Well, sci-fi, I would think, was supposed to be like science fiction and almost like a play on what our future would be. So a good example of sci-fi is probably Blade Runner.
Right.
But you also had a question about Blade Runner. Is Blade Runner more sci-fi or neo-noir? I think it's sci-fi first with neo-noir as a subgenre.
So sci-fi noir.
Sci-fi noir. Like science fiction, RoboCop is science fiction. It sort of takes the ideas of our modern age and modern society and does like sort of a what-if scenario and extends some reality ideas into a fantasy element. Like, what if the police department took a deceased cop and made him a robo-cop?
Sci-fi, the place is in the future, not the past.
It could be, well, because then, I mean, that's more like, okay, yeah, I guess it could be past. Sci-fi could be past, but then you're right. Then if it's in the past, that's more of a fantasy because we know sort of know what happened in the past. So if you sit there and go like, actually, I just thought, what's a fantasy is Inglourious Bastards. That's a fantasy.
That's fantasy?
They fucking kill Hitler. That's a fantasy.
Yeah, I mean that can be right. I mean, you can change the history, so that's fantasy.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is fantasy.
So fantasy can be any time, and doesn't have to be futuristic or.
Right. I feel like it could be any time, any place. I guess sci-fi could also be in the past, but it would have to have a twist. Like, I can't really think of a past sci-fi movie. Maybe like, I don't know, Cowboys and Aliens? Like, what if there were aliens in the cowboy times?
That's sci-fi, right?
Yeah, I would think that's sci-fi. That makes sense. That's like so it doesn't always have to be the future, but there's futuristic elements because we have never encountered interstellar alien races, but they did, so it's sort of the future mixed with the past.
So sci-fi has to have a futuristic technology?
Or a what if scenario where it's like, what if this happened, and it has sort of a twist on our reality. That's kind of what sci-fi is, a twist on our current knowledge of science and reality.
So the time machine is really sci-fi. They're not.
I would say that's sci-fi. Yeah, that's not well. it gets like, I would say, the Time Machine, you know, the George Powell movie, The Time Machine, great fucking movie from 1960, I believe, with the Morlocks. Remember the Morlocks?
Yeah.
The Morlocks used to fucking scare me as a kid. The blue motherfuckers that live underground. I used to love that movie. That has fantasy and sci-fi mixed in because it is in the past. He does go to all sorts of different time spans.
Right.
Changes certain elements of the future. So I think that that's a sci-fi fantasy.
Yeah, and then what's the interesting thing is the story takes place in the already past. Then he goes in the future. So that's a little bit fantasy location. I mean, it's really, you can pinpoint the time, really.
Well, I think he goes like crazy 800,000 years into the future at the end because he falls asleep. He doesn't fall asleep. He gets knocked out and he pushes the handle and it just keeps going. Blah, 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 and he ends up fucking in the future, the really far future.
Soylent Green.
Yeah, sci-fi. Because that takes, I think it takes place in like 2017 or something like that, right?
When movie came out, it was the future. Now it's past. We are it's now story takes place past now.
That's right. So it's a sci-fi fantasy. I guess the whole thing is because I guess you can have a pure sci-fi like 2001.
2001, yeah.
But that also has fantastical elements with the monolith and stuff.
That could be realistic because we went to the moon that year. If we really went.
I don't. That's a fantasy versus reality I don't want to get into. I don't understand, man. I don't want to. I want to have gone to the moon. Okay, I want it to be real. And if it was a fantasy, fuck this life. It's bullshit. If we didn't really go to the moon and they fucking lied to us all these years, it's bullshit.
Have you seen the movie Capricorn 1? I thought that was a great concept.
Is that Kirk Douglas?
No, the James Brolin.
James Brolin. There's also one with Kirk Douglas where he's in the sci-fi element, like a spaceship. But no, Capricorn 1 is one that's been on my list for a very long time, and I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it?
No. I just recently, for the first time, saw Silent Running with Bruce Dern. That's a great movie. So I looked at what like similar movies to Silent Running, and Capricorn 1 was on there. Outpost was on there with Sean Connery. And then there was one with Kirk Douglas where him and a woman, I don't remember the exact scenario, but...
Okay, Outpost. Some people say that's a sci-fi high noon. See, so you have to careful to watch it. I mean...
Yeah, I want to watch that. Like that genre is, I like it a lot, where it's not swashbuckling space adventures. It's like some semi-realistic encounters in space, and space is sort of just a backdrop for a regular. So, like you said, high noon. I like that. I think that's cool.
How about Zardos?
Well, Zardoz, that ain't sci-fi. That's fucking fantasy, man.
Yeah.
That movie is not only is it fantasy, it's LSD. That movie is crazy. I saw that movie in college, and we were watching it in class as like we weren't even supposed to watch it. Somebody just threw it on in between classes because we had like 2 hours. That movie blew my fucking mind.
I like Sean Connery's the costume.
Yeah, he's wearing like a loincloth with the fucking bandolier and the fucking bullets and that took some balls to do. And that was John Borman right after Deliverance.
Oh, after Deliverance?
Yep, he did Deliverance. He had a big hit, and they're like, you could make anything. And he's like, Zardoz, motherfucker. Crazy.
Deliverance. Is it actually happened or that's things happened?
That
in mind?
happened. There's that. No. But the question in Deliverance, not to spoil too much, is whether or not they got the right guy.
Yeah, see, that's the question, right? I mean, hey, we never know, that's the right guy or wrong guy or same guy or different guy. We never knew that.
They never explicitly stated, and the idea that the whole area is going to be flooded within a month, or I forgot the exact time frame, and that all their crimes will be buried under water is really cool, and they never let you know, and it's up to us to rewatch, decide, did they get the right guy, the wrong guy, this and that.
That's really a good movie, huh?
Yeah, Liz wanted to watch it. Her birthday was just recently, and she's like, I want one thing for my birthday. And I was like, what? And she's like, to watch Deliverance as a family. So she wanted me, my brother, my mother, and my father to watch Deliverance. My mother said no, because my mother saw Deliverance in the theater, and she's like, I was eating goobas. And when when the guy started playing the banjo, I couldn't eat the goobas anymore.
But that's a great scene with the banjo duel with this kid.
Yeah, and you know what the secret is? They found that kid in like a local high school or something, and he had the look, but he couldn't play the banjo, so they had a man behind him put his arms through the shirt and play the banjo for him.
He didn't do it?
No, it was like a stunt banjo guy, so somebody was behind him.
I thought he did it. I thought, like, oh my God. They found like a Rayman. They found this autism kid, then he was a genius about playing banjo.
No. It was the kid had the look, and then they got the banjo hands. So, that is a great movie. I mean, I hate watching that movie because I used to make fun of it in high school. Me and my friends would like laugh and like talk about the main scene. This is what scene I'm talking about. And we'd be like, squeal like a pig, whee, all that shit. You got a real purty mouth. But when I really think about what's happening in that scene now as an adult, that is some fucking scary shit. Imagine me and you were camping, Yuki, and two mountain men coming. They're like, Yuki, you got a real purty mouth.
Yeah.
That would be. I think in that case, I would be the Ned Beatty and you would be John Voight.
Okay.
Yeah. Because they would like look at me and they'd be like, because he says a line that I recognized this time that I never heard before or forgot. He says, what we have here is more of a sow than a boar. So he means that Ned Beatty is a female, not a male. Oh, what a fucked up line, dude. And so that movie, The Exorcist, they're really hard for me to watch sometimes because now as I get older, they are really psychologically scarring if you really think about what's going on in those movies, especially in like The Exorcist, like medical scenes and stuff like that, or the fact that the mother can't cure her daughter. Those fuck me up more than they did when I was younger.
Yeah, they making a new Exorcist now with Scarlett Johansson.
I can't even. I'm not interested.
Last year?
Horrible. The last one was horrible. It's the only time.
I mean, why they remaking it? Why bother? We don't need to, someone repainted the Mona Lisa, right? We want to see original.
The only time I have done a Letterboxd review ever, because usually I'm pretty positive on Letterboxd, and if I don't like a movie, I just don't log it, because I don't want to, trash filmmakers and stuff. But in this case, The Exorcist Believer, I did a review, a half star. I would have given it 0 if I could. And I said, The Exorcist Believer is kind of like the time I sat on my balls and forgot who I was for an hour and 51 minutes. Because it's true. That movie betrays every single aspect of the original Exorcist to the point where it betrays Ellen Bernstein's character so deeply that the filmmakers did not understand the original film in any way, shape, or form. At all. At all. In order to push some sort of a modern agenda that Ellen Bernstein would be anti-patriarchy. The only people that helped Ellen Bernstein in the original one was the fucking Catholic Church. And they died saving her daughter. So all these years later, that woman, that character, would not go, the damn patriarchy. Absolutely not. That is the biggest fucking betrayal I've ever seen in a movie of a character. Just my opinion.
No, but that's true, though. You're right. I mean, maybe...
It is modern bullshit. It was a fucking movie that 100 people had to give notes on, I'm sure. And some asshole was like, well, what if she, is a feminist, writer and remembers that the men kept her out of the room. The men didn't keep her out of the room. She didn't want to go in that room anymore because she was getting fucking furniture thrown at her and she was witnessing her daughter stabbing a crucifix into her fucking, genitals. Like that's the fucking most stupid thing that I have ever witnessed in a movie. And I've seen some stupid movies, Yuki. I've watched a lot of full moon movies and Charles Band movies, and Exorcist Believer was stupider than Baby Oopsie. Fuck that shit. Anyway, talk about fantasy versus reality. Not just movies, Yuki. Let's think about fantasy versus reality in real terms, because sometimes, Yuki, did you ever get the thing where it's like Rashomon, right? Where we all experience an event together. And then as you start to talk about that event, you have a different point of view or a different story or a different experience. I have a different point of view or a different experience. And all these different people who experience the same experience all have different versions of what happened, to the point where somebody might be lying, but they don't believe that they're lying. They are remembering a fantasy in a way.
But it's a reality. That's real life.
But what's real? Is reality? Let's take Rashomon as an example, because that's a good example of reality versus fantasy in terms of the way that I'm approaching it. Is in Rashomon, it has to be a truth, right? But each character has a different story that conflicts against the other one's story. So is reality one of their stories who's telling the truth, or is reality all three of their stories combined for a truth, even if somebody's lying?
Or what if nobody's lying and it's just a different interpretation?
But it's really hard. Well, in that movie, it's really hard to misinterpret certain things, right? Isn't that sort of the idea? Is somebody has to be lying? Or maybe I misread the movie, because there's some harrowing things that happen that one person thinks was consensual and then another person doesn't, right?
Well, I can't say, and I don't want to say, but my take was, it's not like one person is lying and then the other two person was saying the truth. It's like all three people has a different point of view and different interpretation. There is no correct answer. That's the real life.
Okay, but I hate this because I've gone through experiences where I know the truth, right? I know the truth because I experienced the truth, and people put out lies to sidestep the truth, and then somebody will go, there's two sides to every story. Well, two sides to every story, when somebody's telling what really happened and somebody's telling a complete fantasy, then there's no two sides to every story. There's somebody lying and somebody telling the truth. So what's reality? The truth or the lie? It's not a combination of the two, because then the fucking person that's telling the truth of a situation, you're negating that for something that's fabricated, which is a fantasy.
Or what if misunderstanding or misinterpret, then things happen wrong way?
It's hard to misinterpret certain things, right? It's sometimes there's deception, and I'm not saying all the time. Yes, I do agree with you that there are certain situations where something happens, one person takes it one way, one person takes it another way, and then okay, yeah, we agree to disagree, or we both experience different things, blah 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 blah. But then that's why that's why I don't like that whole there's two sides to every story. Or no, there's three sides to every story. Your version, my version, and then a mixture of both, which is the truth. That's not always true. That's not always true. But I do agree with you. Like, so say you and I are in the middle of a bombing or something, like a terrorist bombing. Your version of the story will be one way. My version will be another way. Maybe you heard the explosion 3 minutes before I did. You know, there's all kinds of ways. And it's because our senses aren't perfect. So we experience or misremember all that sort of stuff.
Mm. But sometimes, have you played this game like you tell one story, one person, then that person tell the same story, another person.
Oh, telephone.
Yeah, it's called telephone. So the first story and the last story is totally different, right?
Most of the time, yeah. Like, I remember when you're a kid, you play that, you say, it could even be a phrase. It's like, yeah, why did the chicken cross the road? And then the next person says, why did the chicken cross the road? And then the next person said, the chicken crossed the road. And then the next person said, chickens crossed the road. And it gets to the end where it's completely morphed from what it started as.
Yeah, but see, nobody's lying. Just the story goes and, becoming different. People, write, adding a story or, putting or taking out or, elements. And then.
Well, then you just convinced me, Yuki, that even through a childhood game, that you can't trust anyone. You can't trust anyone's story other than your own.
Right.
But I guess even then you can't trust your own remembrances, because I read something somewhere that like some crazy percentage of our memories are false memories, that we fill in the blanks of things through our inner monologue, our thoughts, our theories, and all that sort of stuff. We fill in the blanks of experiences that weren't necessarily there, but that we've convinced ourselves were there because we have holes in our memories and things like that.
Yeah, because the let's say like some kind of trial, you're a witness, and you tell one story, you come back, then you tell different. Oh, I guess I was wrong. Like 12 Angry Men, they're talking about, those witnesses. This, well, they're not lying, but they think they saw this, but nobody knows that's true. But they're not lying. They think it's true, but what if it's wrong?
Right. Because it's like in that one, it's like wasn't it that they heard footsteps,
right?
And then they sort of planned it out and was like, could it have been that somebody else was there before the other person,
right.
Like all that sort of stuff. Yeah, you're right. It's like just because you heard footsteps and then you saw somebody coming out of the room doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't somebody right before you saw that other person come out of the room. All that sort of stuff was misinterpreted through the trial.
Or just from the past, you just assume that's the same person, but could be a different person. So see again, people telling the truth, they think it's truth, but reality is they could be wrong. That's could happen too, right? I mean,
but that's sort of like disheartening because when you're talking to anyone, every single thing that anyone says you have to take with a certain grain of salt. That, do you trust this person? Do you not trust this person? But also, are they just not telling you the right thing because they just don't remember and have faulty memories? That's nerve-wracking because you're supposed to put your trust in people that you love and care for, but what if they're just fucking so fucking wrong that then you like put your faith in some sort of not a lie but an illusion?
yeah, but that's everyday conversation, no?
I guess like I don't know, Yuki. We've gone through experiences together, you and I, where you and I agree on certain things, and then other people manipulate or fuck it up so that their side, in quotes, is the one that's viewed as like more acceptable. But that's like usually like power grabs or stuff like that in order to get something, either money, power, the notoriety, all that sort of stuff. So maybe the idea of fantasy versus reality works on an interpersonal level because we're all just fucking with each other so that we can get higher status than the next guy. Like maybe all of life is just a game, Yuki. Because I think maybe we're just playing games with each other constantly.
Yeah, because it's let's say trial and the witness, and then maybe judge believe this company's president word over drunk homeless guy.
But the homeless guy is telling the real reality.
Right, but since he's a homeless drunk, nobody believe him, and this other company's president, he's lying it, but everybody believes him.
Right, they believe him because of his status and his record and all that sort of stuff. But maybe the only reason he got to that height is because of his lying, manipulation, all that sort of stuff, not telling the full truth. That's disheartening, Yuki. I don't like that. Damn, man. Reality and fantasy both suck then.
Yeah, but the reality is, good things happen to bad people. Bad things happen to good people. That's true too, though, right?
No, of course. I mean, it's not like only bad people succeed. There's no way. It's impossible. But bad people succeed stepping on the backs of good people, I think is more true and more often than not.
Yeah, those, drug lord, I mean, they're criminal, but they're rich. They're millionaire.
Right, they had to cap people, they had to destroy people's operations and businesses and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, so...
Like, what's a good example of fantasy versus reality is The Sopranos. I've been watching that again. And the way I don't know why, but I've read that people skip the therapy scenes in The Sopranos, and they call them boring and stuff. But some of the best, like, philosophical, existential shit is in the therapy scenes, because Tony Soprano in a lot of those scenes is wrestling with his own identity and lying or inventing lies in order to justify his horrible behaviors. I mean, there's things that he says in there that are just completely anti what you just saw him do. And he's like lying to his therapist in order to justify his criminal behavior. It's a fucking fascinating. And that's a great example of sometimes fantasy versus reality, where you see the reality of his life and then you witness his fantasy making in order to justify himself. It's great. I mean, I'm on my like fifth watch through of that show since it's come out. And it's a masterpiece of comedy, but it's also, this is a good way. I'm on the final season. I'm gonna watch it with that in mind, that it's like Tony Soprano is creating a fantasy, and so is his wife. His wife, Carmela Soprano, completely struggles with the fact that her husband is a murdering, philandering criminal who destroys people's lives, but she just wants to live a good life and be pious and pretend like she goes to church and all this stuff, but really she's complicit in the murder. She's his accomplice.
I have to see that.
Yes, she built a fantasy world for herself in her brain, saying, oh, I'm a woman of God and this and that. Meanwhile, her entire reality is based on murder and theft and criminal behavior.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Streaming? Is it?
It's on HBO Max if you have it.
Oh, HBO Max, I have it. Because when it came out originally, I didn't have a cable, so I never saw it.
Well, so what I'll say about it is I would give it some time, because the first episode was made like a year before they made the second episode. So they made the pilot in order to get the show made. Then when they came back, then they made the first season. The pilot has different elements to it that aren't in the rest of the show, and some of them don't really match exactly, but it's still good. It's a good launch pad to set up the characters. The second episode really sets up the characters, and then once you get into the third or fourth episode, it fucking shoots to the moon.
You should see from the pilot, right? Not from the...
Still watch the pilot, but realize that it was one of those things where they wrote it, and then once they got greenlit, a year had passed, so they had different ideas of how they wanted to do it. So the second episode is sort of like a new pilot as well.
Oh, I see.
Sort of. It's not exact. Like, there's little discrepancies between the first episode and the second episode. But then, once you get into it, it takes like 2 or 3 episodes, but then it fucking goes. And to me, it's the best show that is and will ever be made for television. Anyway, back to fantasy and reality, Yuki. Any further thoughts or final thoughts on fantasy versus reality?
No way. So the fantasy and then reality could be the one coin flip the side, head and tail. And depends on I don't know, your mind or your thoughts, or could be one coin, heads and tail. I mean, could be totally different, but could be the same, I think.
Yeah, they blend together because, like when say like when I tell a story about something that happens in the past, and I'm telling, say, my cousins, right, and I want to make it funny, sometimes I'll add details that weren't exact, but I exaggerated detail in order to make it funnier or something like that. So that makes it fantasy then, because it's not the exact thing that happened, but I'll play on a kernel of reality in order to make it funnier or more entertaining.
So you exaggerating, you adding the little...
And it's flavor. When you're telling a story, if you tell it exactly the way it happened, it's going to be boring as fuck. But if you tell it with like a joke, an extra added joke, or an emphasis on something that wasn't as important in the time, shit like that, you gotta sort of embellish sometimes in order to be entertaining, I guess. But
so it's not the lie. It's a
not in that regard. But then there's people who straight up. For example, one time I had a cousin, right, who was sort of a degenerate. And he got, like, it was really early on when online gambling started to become a thing. And he was associated with this online gambling .com. And my town, Floral Park, borders the Belmont racetrack. So whenever the Belmont Stakes was happening, it was a big time in my town. They have like a festival. It's right next door. The Belmont. It's the third leg of the Triple Crown. So you go to the races, you have fun, you bet on the horses, whatever. It was a big year. I forgot which. I think it was the year Big Brown was in the running for. So my cousin tried to convince everybody he knew. You got to bet through my .com, my people. You know, we'll get you a deal, all this stuff. We'll do it. So my mother, unfortunately, was like, oh, okay, you know, because she's a nice person. She's like, yeah, I'll help you out with your new endeavor, whatever. I'll bet through your thing. So she bet on this horse that was kind of a long shot because she liked the name. She didn't really know much about the horse itself, but she liked the name. For some reason, it was like the name of something that she loved or something. And it won. It won like a lot of money. And my fucking cousin comes over crying. Like the next day, it's like, I can't pay you. I can't pay you because they're going to kill me. They didn't know that there was going to be a score this big and all this stuff. So that was a good example of fantasy versus reality. He's playing a big shot going, hey, my new .com, you come and bet with me, hey, oh, hey. And then somebody wins I can't play, hold on. And you know what? He was lying. Of course they could fucking pay because the amount of money they probably got could cover whatever bet she made. So he just wanted to pocket the money because he was a degenerate fuck. That's fantasy versus reality, motherfucker. You fucking loser, degenerate fuck. Should have just bet through the fucking proper channels at Belmont and you make the money that way. Anyway, I don't know. Yuki, any more examples of fantasy versus reality before we wrap this up?
No, so you always have to be careful, you know. You just only fantasy you could be, you know, fucked up, but you always have to be careful both sides.
Yeah, because there's also examples of like if you tell the reality of a situation, it might hurt somebody. Like if somebody say gives you a script and you're reading it and it's a fucking piece of shit and you're friends with the person, you don't want to tell them like this thing sucks. So you have to sort of do it in a way that's nice or somewhat of a fantasy or like really dig deep for the positive. I remember once in LA, this guy gave me a script and I couldn't read it. It was like not English. And he was an English speaking guy. It was written like somebody like in the first grade. And it was like this big space adventure or something. And I just couldn't understand it. And I tried my hardest to get through it. And finally I just said to the guy, I was like, I think your concept is flawed. And I think that you have really big ideas. What you need to do is reorganize and restructure the three. And I told him this whole bullshit about 3-act structure and all. And yeah, it was hard because I couldn't say, dude, you can't fucking even write English.
That's like a basic thing, huh?
Yeah, just as long as I can understand it, I don't care if the fucking script sucks. If I can read your writing, that's a plus.
Oh, let's talk about the script someday.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about scripts or writing or something like that. Yeah, that sounds good. All right, well, look, if you have any more thoughts about fantasy or reality, we'll bring them up in other episodes, but that's it for us today, Yuki. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's good. I have nothing to say.
So when you tell people about this episode, are you going to say it was a fantasy or a reality?
The reality. This is the reality thing.
All right, Yuki. I like that. This is realistic shit. All right, so we got to thank everybody, Yuki. Everybody's so nice to us. You know, with the ending of the last drive-in, you know, people reached out and were like, hey, we love you and Yuki. I got a lot of messages saying you and Yuki were so important to the show and stuff like that. And I don't know when this episode's coming out, but...
Oh, and everybody, you know, that whenever we do other things, just follow us because we're always there.
Yeah, we're just doing our thing. We're having a good time. We're trying to just be fun and have a realistic fantasy of a life.
The luau at the Central Park still, you know, not happening. So
it's going to take a lot of money to do. Well, all right, Yuki. So we'll see you next time at the
Reality Fantasy John and Yuki Buffet.
That's right. Don't be a fucking degenerate.
Right.
Yuki and John's Patreon buffet.